Hello, I'm David, the commissioner from Nest, and just before we start your stream, I wanted to take some time to show you 3 little games I had the chance of playing and give you a little overview of them. And I'm going to attempt to do this in just about 5 minutes. Now, first up is a game called T-Rex Breakout. Now, I do need to preface this and say that it's not so much a game as it is more of a tech demo. And from what I could gather, it was made by one person who also made another sequence called Raptors in the Kitchen, which is also available for download. In this game, you basically play as an unwitting character who does his level best to avoid the unwanted approach of a T-Rex. And this is all the while it attempts to holla at you and get your digits. Okay, not really, but it's more about trying to avoid becoming a T-Rex meal as a dinosaur attempts to eat you in several different ways. Now, most of you will remember this sequence from the first Jurassic Park film, and let me say that the ability to play this in a first-person perspective is amazing. The lighting, sound, and feel, wow, it's something you need to try, even though you might only get a maximum of 10 minutes of gameplay out of it. Regardless, it's worth it. Let's hear some credit for the creator. Next up is Xeno Trigger. This was a game I had a chance of playing at a game conference. And this is a game created by students who were given only a few weeks to create a new game from the ground up. So everything that you see here is original. The game pits you against the clock and then later your ghost as you attempt to make the fastest time getting from point A to B. Shooting targets along the way will give you a little bit of a time boost or deduction. Slightly reminiscent of CSGO surfing, it does have its originality in level design and wall running concept, which controls quite well. Definitely a fun little game with a twist. Xeno Trigger was fun when I had the chance of playing it, with its wall running, double jumping, sliding, gunplay, and slight racing aspect. This game has an interesting potential, although the unfortunate news is it only has 2 levels, which are the tutorial and the main run. I would hope to see this game carried out more in the near future, as it really does offer something unique to gamers. Like zombies? Cowboys? The Bayou? Then Hunt Showdown might be a game for you. The game has 2 different gameplay elements. The quick play option, which is just beating a dead horse. It's Battle Royale. That's it. That's it. But there is Bounty Hunt, which allows you to play cooperatively with another player and try to collect a bounty against some sort of undead zombie demon thing, all the while trying not to get killed by players also trying to collect the same bounty. Now this game is quite gorgeous as it simultaneously melts your computer, as a Crytek game will do. The gameplay is quite smooth and quite satisfying with swords, guns, explosives, and a few other gadgets you encounter. And this is all while you encounter different enemies scattered around the world. The game is unforgiving though, as you have to be aware of traps set by other players, as well as players themselves, who can loot you to get better weapons and more ammo. The PvP elements in the game can be quite unforgiving if you are low on ammo, don't have an adequate weapon, or just suck at engaging enemies. I found that PvP was usually very short, as it may only take 1 shot to be killed. Yeah. The environment elements, however, can be just as challenging, as different enemies may have different abilities, and you really have almost no ability to miss a shot, as you can die just as easily from the environment as from other players. PvE comes in 4 different flavors, first being where the hell did you all come from? Oh my god, reload, reload, reload. Dear God, please reload. Are you serious? Seriously, no ammo right now, seriously. And my personal favorite. Oh, what the Mother God. That said, I want to talk about the guns. Wow, these are amazing. Each gun has a different firing animation, reload time, damage amount, ammo capacity, everything. And landing headshots is just so satisfying. It's not often games go into this sort of weaponry detail, but it certainly gives you a good feel for the world and the time setting. There are no MP40s or M16s to pick up, and it really amps up the challenge for hardcore players. For the more casual player, however, this might not be their game of choice due to the extreme difficulty and learning curve. My final statement, however, is fuck the ducks, and all the birds, for that matter, whose only purpose is to cause chaos and mayhem. The only way to get those stupid birds to shut up is to turn them into some bayou fried bird. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching and check us out at nesthq.online for more content coming soon. Let's get back to your streamer. Hello, I'm David, the
Greetings, villains, vigilantes, heroes, and heroines.
You're tuned in to Project Supervillain. We're your hosts. I'm Mark Drifter.
I'm Midnight White, and today we have teamed up with our friends at Nest, the National Esports Tournament, to bring you our first ever game review.
That's right. Today we're casting off into uncharted territory.
Indie games!
No. I mean, yes, but no, actually, we're going to space, you bastard. So today we're jumping into Void Bastards.
Yeah. Being cast adrift in outer space can be an unnerving idea for many, but for the interstellar convicts aboard the prisoner transport vessel known as the Void Ark, confronting the hostile terrors and isolation of the Void is their only potential salvation from both death and further detention, should they be able to survive their mission.
Developed by Blue Manchu and published by Humble Bundle, Void Bastards takes place in the Sargasso Nebula, where if one commits a crime and gets locked up, the punishments are far worse than in any galaxy you've visited recently. As a penal client of the Void Ark, your chances of parole are slim at best. The likelihood of encountering another human or other friendly life form is nil, and you've been tasked with going where others have met their end to salvage their failures.
This involves traversing outer space to find the seemingly abandoned wrecks of old vessels floating astray in the cosmos. Exploring these procedurally generated derelicts in first person, your mission will be to loot them of all resources and parts and ultimately survive against the horrors lurking within their gloomy halls.
With its vibrant and discernible comic book style visuals, one of the coolest parts about this game is the design aspects chosen in everything from levels to menus. Each vessel type has a distinguishable color palette and certain features that remain consistent throughout, while others characterize each unique class of void ship.
The atmosphere created in the game is both chilling and intriguing, akin to its inspirator, the System Shock series. This effect is compounded by both the soundtrack and the audio of the game, which provides the perfect ambiance for each map, menu, and event.
As a roguelite, the characters you play as are mostly inconsequential, but each of them has their own set of perks and quirks, which we'll get into in just a bit. Aside from the main character, there aren't many others besides Bax, the cheeky smartass Lightbright, whose only goal is to ensure the repair of the FTL drive on the Void Ark.
Feel free to use these items constructed by a former client. A little scrubbing with bleach should remove the bloodstains.
No matter how many clients have to be sacrificed.
Other than Bax, you will find only enemies in the corridors of the long-forgotten ships you will explore. Blobby exploding goos, space ghosts, Big Daddy cosplayers, and a bunch of these guys, along with many more. Also, be sure to listen carefully. You're going to get roasted whether you like it or not.
Surprise, buttface!
As mentioned earlier, ships are procedurally generated, but their consistencies are evident in the level design and layouts of each map, which helps with the cohesiveness of the experience. The rooms you will find, such as the helm, FTL drive, atmosphere chamber, and security centers, will be aboard most vessels, along with others that can change your approach to each map.
Some ships will be without power as you board, and you will have to find the generator room to restore power before you can do anything. This is just one example of the many conditions or hazards within the levels, so be sure to check the description of the vessel you're attempting to board before doing so.
While the main objective of the game is to acquire the part to repair the Void Ark's FTL drive, the game also gives the player side objectives in the form of collecting parts to upgrade not only their weapons and equipment, but also their personal abilities.
Along with this, each prisoner has randomized status effects that you start out with, which are...
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Not to worry, for if you have a status effect that you dislike, aboard some vessels you can find a gene therapy machine to replace and add effects.
Being a sci-fi horror game with prominent survival elements, there is a substantial focus on looting, crafting, and resource management. There is a multitude of parts and accessories you can find which will allow you to further develop your weapons and gear that you will take with you on your expeditions. Furthermore, there are scrap items to collect, which are used for crafting among other resources. This is where the game opens up your options for how you approach your mission.
Some weapons are straightforward like the pistol or the stapler, both of them operating like typical firearms. More exotic weapons like the spiker can hit your target without alerting them and will poison them, draining their health over time, allowing you to proceed unnoticed. There are also a plethora of grenades, traps, and gadgets at your disposal, which can have many effects ranging from stuns, distractions, or simple detonation.
Its quirky, dark humor and perfectly delivered dialogue will evoke hearty chuckles aplenty, which adds a much appreciated contrast to the game's normally dismal and ominous tone. As I was playing, I found it difficult to pull myself away, as I wanted to know what was going to happen to the client I was playing as, and what fate would await them. I found myself wanting to stay alive at all costs to further upgrade my client, to generally be as dynamic as possible.
And such an accomplishment isn't hard, as the multitude of upgrades to search for and acquire means that exploring each crack and crevice of every map you visit is never a waste of time, as you're bound to find something to help you in your long voyage.
Styled like a comic book, its lively colors, vividness, and additions of comic book staples such as onomatopoeias and speech bubbles succeed in capturing the feeling of being a part of this world within a graphic novel.
Though simple in mechanics, each one is implemented cleverly, and fans of other first-person shooters will feel instantly familiar with the game's groove.
This game is badass. Although we haven't played through in its entirety, we likely will, as its core gameplay is sure to provide almost a chronic sense of enjoyment, and its compelling nature makes you want to envelop yourself in its thralls evermore.
Though certain elements such as stealth mechanics could use some refinement along with the AI, it doesn't take away from the game in the slightest, and oftentimes it can result in very humorous occurrences, ones that rival Elder Scrolls games.
Yeah.
But words will never do it justice. You must venture out into the void to affirm it for yourself. Project Supervillain is officially giving you permission to go out and buy this game right now. Because if you don't, I'm gonna find your house, I'll find where you live, and I'm gonna take your electric toothbrush and I'll shove it.
If sci-fi, survival horror, and shooting piques your interest, this is one game you won't want to pass on. It's got a little niche for all fans of action games, a quality that is sure to make Void Bastards an instant classic for many. Thanks for tuning into our first game review. We thoroughly enjoyed our time with this game, and we hope you enjoyed our review, but we want to hear your opinion too.
Does Void Bastards intrigue you? Did this video make you consider buying the game, or is it just not your style? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section.
If you liked the video, make sure you leave some support for us. We really appreciate it. Go check out the social media links in the description. We got YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Mixer, Twitch, all those platforms. We're pretty active on all of them, and we even have a Discord, which is kind of a VIP only thing. If you want to be involved in that, make sure you're following one of those platforms and send us a message to be invited, and we'll send you a link.
And don't forget to check out our friends at NEST, that's National Esports Tournament. Their link will also be in the description. But that's enough for now, folks, so thanks for joining, thanks for watching.
And Project Dismissed. Peace out, everybody.
And you're still sitting here because... Go and buy the game!
Grab.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We're here with Ben Lee.
Hi, Nick.
Thank you for your time.
Welcome.
You're lead designer on
I'm the art director.
Art director on Void Bastards. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the game or how you came involved with this project?
Okay, this is a game that Blue Manchu had been thinking about when we got to the end of Card Hunter, largely to John Shea's experience in System Shock 2 and Bioshock. He was really keen to explore this sort of game space in a game of his own that wasn't tied to the previous franchise. And I've known John for a really long time. I've recently gone freelance. When we started Blue Manchu, we made Card Hunter, and at the end of that we wanted to do another project, so that's how I came to the project. Sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Well, the game itself, I very much enjoy the aesthetic of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that you had in mind for a long time, or is this an art style that you have just recently been approaching? Or?
I don't really come up with art styles until we start developing the game, because I think it's important for the art to support the gameplay and the idea that you're trying to get across. So it doesn't make any sense to me to come up with an art style before you know what the game is. So we came up with this during production, thanks very much. And it actually changed quite a few times. So we arrived at this particular look, I would say probably about halfway through. It actually looked a lot more... It was always going to be a comic book looking game. That was the original that was my original pitch for how we were going to be able to make a first person shooter as a 5-person team, 4 or 5-person team, which was a pretty huge... Like, there was a good chance, I was quite worried we wouldn't be able to do it at all. The solution was, well, we'll need a very representational art style if we're going to be able to pull it off. And that's around the time I came up with the idea of making everything look like a comic rather than an anime or a film or something else. Because that way, your expectations are quite different from an audience point of view. So it originally looked a lot more, it wasn't funny, like it was actually a very serious looking sort of European style Mobius comic.
Right. It is very lighthearted in a sense, right?
Well, that's when the art style sort of really came alive, is that once we decided that we didn't have to be serious anymore and it could be funny and sort of crazy, that's when my imagination took off and everyone's imagination took off, and it really helped shape the game. It was around the same time that Kara, our narrative designer, came on board as well. She had a lot to do with the feel of the game. So around that point, all of the type of comic it was started to sort of come together. This person's playing in some sort of crazy fisheye mode. It looks horrible. I wish people wouldn't do that. Anyway.
Well, as an artist,
Yes.
what are the things that you draw on for inspiration when it comes to just crafting your vision or what you want to create? From any medium, really. I mean,
Yeah, I don't really work like that. But
Okay.
I'd say it's my imagination.
Just your
But
imagination.
that would mean that obviously my imagination is my brain, and my brain absorbs stuff. So for this particular game, I was wanting to evoke the feeling of like early 80s, 2000 AD comic books, British comics. And people, when I say that, people say, "Oh, well, what elements have you used?" From? I was like, "Well, I haven't done that. This is just how I would do that if I was fictionally somehow alive in the early 80s making a comic book." So there's nothing in it that's really copied from anywhere or drawn from anywhere. It's just it's the sum of my experiences turned into my imagination for what I think that would fit for this project.
your own personal vision.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's influences, but nothing's been like lifted or deliberately referenced.
Oh no, I feel it's
Yeah.
it is very unique. The aesthetic of it is actually very nice to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy on the eyes, but yet it's very sharp, detailed. but soft at the same time, right? Jovial, it's got that fun vibe to it. In terms of the physics of the game, is there anything that you'd like to speak on in reference to that, or
Physics. You mean the physics systems?
just the physics systems? Or...
It's actually very simple. We actually set out to make a throwback kind of Duke Nukem early build engine, like Dark Forces Duke Nukem sort of system behind the game. But then we wanted to make the ship systems and the crafting and everything. That's new. Like that wasn't in any of the old school games. And but we haven't bothered doing. We don't have ragdolls and lots of modern physics stuff in it at all. So it's got very limited. It's got as much. Most of the things in Void Bastards it's got as much as we need. So it's got physics, like when things fall over or get knocked around, there's some physics there, but that's what we were really setting out to do. So it's kind of like a much fancier version of an old school 90s shooter.
In terms of your player base, would you say that mostly there would be a majority of FPS first-person shooter fans, or do you draw in some people who are also into the MMO and the leveling up aspect?
I'd be surprised if there were any MMO. Like, I would hope that MMO fans would enjoy the game, but I don't think it wasn't aimed to attract MMO players or anything. Its real target was people who enjoyed System Shock 2, which is quite an old game now. But it's one of the reasons I came to work for John. Is I was a big fan of that game back when I joined Irrational Games, and it's got a reasonably big fan base. BioShock's got a big fan base, so those are the sorts of people who want a single player, immersive sim style science fiction, crafting survival FPS game. So we weren't. That's who we were making it for, and hopefully other people will enjoy it as well.
In terms of the dialogue in the game, right? It's very animated. It's great dialogue. How did that come about?
Well, originally there actually wasn't any dialogue in the game when we first started designing it, and when I was talking about that point where we started making it funnier and sort of richer, around that point we decided we wanted to bring someone on to actually write particularly monster dialogue. The monsters were far less interesting when they didn't speak. And that's Cara Ellison. She's responsible for all of that.
That's a very nice touch.
Yeah, it's great. And Ryan's the audio director, and he handled recording that with some really talented people that he knows, and it was actually very smooth once we decided to do it, the audio.
Do you have any future plans for level expansion or downloadable content in the future?
Well, we've just released some DLC this month called the Bang Tidy DLC. Which introduces a new enemy type and some new events on the star map, stuff like that, which is really cool. And we haven't officially announced anything beyond that, but we're thinking about stuff all the time, and we'd love to make some more Void Bastards content.
Oh, we'd love to see it.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any hidden Easter eggs you might be able to give me hints about, or?
I don't know. Well, the problem is when you say Easter egg, nothing in the game to me is an Easter egg because I know everything that's in it.
Right.
So I'm not
the master key.
I'm not. Yeah, I've seen it all. So I'm not really sure if there's any. There's not really any secret. It's not that sort of game. There's not really secrets, and the fun of the game is figuring out how all of the systems fit together and what happens when you do this and what happens when you do that. So none of that's really an Easter egg. It's more about discovery. I'd say my big Easter egg to people who perhaps have come to the game and they think it's really difficult and they're getting killed a lot is that it wasn't designed to be a run and gun shooter. If you're running around just blasting stuff, that's sort of the wrong way to play the game, and you're going to find it very difficult. It's more a game about learning what happens when you do certain things and taking advantage of those things within the ships. And I don't want to give too much of that away because that's basically the fun of the game. So experiment.
And I think that adds a lot of value. It makes it not so one-dimensional, right?
Yeah,
it's more multi-tiered. It's more immersive.
It's not a combat game. It's a science fiction crafting survival game, adventure game that has combat in it, but it's not centered around that combat. In fact, it's usually a really good idea to avoid combat if you can, because all of your ammunition and your supplies are very restricted. If you shoot more than you need to, you're actually wasting your own inventory. So I think for an FPS player though, that's unusual. Like most games they expect you to kill everything, and that's not really the goal of this game at all. You can though. I mean, that's the thing that I think's cool about it, is that we've tried to make a game where you can actually play it however you want to play it, If you want to play it shooting as much stuff as possible and concentrating very much on weapons, you can do that, but it's in some ways it's making it harder for yourself.
A little more skill needed.
Yeah,
A little more thought
this
process.
strategy
than
map
just
we're looking at, like, it's actually very important.
run and
And
gun.
considering all the information we put here on the right-hand side of the screen, we tell you everything that's going to be on the ship. And if you ignore that and you run in and just start shooting, that's sort of your own fault that things have gone bad. But that's something that we sort of miss games that did that allowed the player to make a mistake and then they find out they made a mistake. Especially a lot of modern console games, like the really big budget ones, they're more about sort of leading you through a bunch of encounters, and it doesn't really matter if you succeed or not, you're going to get to the next one at some point anyway. And we're not knocking those games, we were trying to provide an alternative to that, something where it's more
substantial.
Yeah, you actually have to learn it. It's not just, and here's the next thing, and here's the next thing.
They're not just giving it to you, you gotta earn it.
You do have to, you do have to earn it. You definitely have to earn it in Void Bastards.
I was going back, going back to the aesthetics, which very, very nice. They're very nice to look at. And I know you had mentioned comic books were a big inspiration. What type of comic books have you been to?
Well, this is based entirely on 2000 AD's 1980s British comic book, which had characters like Judge Dredd and the ABC Warriors in them. But they also had a lot of Future Shock stuff. They were fairly subversive. For a mainstream comic, they're actually very subversive in a clever way that wasn't especially obvious. And I haven't really collected comics since the early 90s. Like, I buy them, I'll buy a digest occasionally if it's a good one. But I don't collect comic books the way I used to when I was a kid. So this is kind of like my memories of
that
period and that style of science fiction comic particularly. You know, it's not a superhero comic, it's a sci-fi comic. And there weren't very many of those when I was a kid in the early 80s. So,
well, I'd say that art style comes through very well.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't easy. I'll put it that way. It took quite a lot of work.
What's your favorite weapon to use when you're playing?
My favorite weapon's the Cluster Flak, because I came up with the name for that as well, and I think it's hilarious.
It is.
It's probably not the best weapon for all occasions because it's really noisy. It destroys a lot of stuff. So I think for I probably use the Zapper and the shotgun the most. I'm not an incredibly skilled Void Bastards player in terms of the shooting part, and both of those kind of make up for my deficiencies in aim and twitch. And the Zapper's it's just a very useful. We actually had to turn it down because it was a little bit too powerful just before we launched. But the point of the Zapper is it stuns things briefly, and that doesn't sound very like I've seen people use it by just repeatedly shooting something until it dies. But that's not what the Zapper's for. It's for just paralyzing something for a bit, so you can run away or it gives you some space.
Or pull out another weapon.
And if you do that properly, it's actually extremely powerful, and it works very well on robots who are the toughest enemies. So that's my personal favorite combo or tip. I've seen people use the dart gun really well as well. I've never been very good with it, but if you do that cleverly, you can do a really good sort of long game with it.
In terms of esports, or how this might fall into something like a competitive circuit, would you like to see something like this be played competitively or be played within various leagues?
Well, the only way you could play this competitively would be speedrunning. There's no multiplayer component, so it'd be cool. It's certainly not. We didn't design the game to be played like that. But if someone wanted to do a league where they speedrun Void Bastards, that'd be cool.
Would a multiplayer patch be something you'd be?
That wouldn't really be.
Down the
as far as I know, that wouldn't even be possible. We haven't built the game to be multiplayer. I mean, it could be possible, but I think it'd be a tremendous amount of work for us to do it. I'm not against it at all. I think it would actually probably be really fun, but it would be another game that looked like, the whole mechanical system of the game has nothing to do with multiplayer. So a multiplayer Void Bastards would be a game that looked the same, like had very similar graphics, but the gameplay would have to be entirely different. So it's kind of another game. It's not really a patch, if we were to do that.
Well, I could see that being very, very interesting, and I could definitely see people being interested in competing in this because it's such a fun game to play. You want to share that with multiple people, it would just, all the better.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
That's it. okay. You can.
questions here, my
You're
friend.
editing, so that's fine.
Well, we already went over how you might come up with the art style. And the dialogue, did I ask you about the dialogue in the game?
Yeah.
And the Easter eggs. Oh. Do you have any future plans for Twitch integration?
Could you specify what you mean by that?
Well, from my understanding, I guess maybe would you like this game to be something that Twitch streamers gravitate towards?
Definitely. I thought you meant in terms of features. So, yeah, we've actually been really pleased with the amount of people streaming Void Bastards, especially around launch. Just if you look at the Steam page, there was tons and tons of Void Bastards being streamed around that time. So I think it's actually, unintentionally, to be honest, a fairly stream-friendly sort of game, just because funny, unexpected things happen. It is quite fun to watch. Like, I quite enjoyed, while we were making it, just watching one of the other team members play it for a while, because even though I know how the game works, I still don't know what's going to happen from minute to minute, and it is fun to see how people deal with stuff, and the way that problems escalate in Void Bastards I find really entertaining. Not everyone does, some people find that difficult, but I'm laughing my head off the worse it gets for a player. Like, they're running out of air and they're on fire and they can't find the door and it's locked, and
Can become challenging, yes.
as long as you make it out, to me that's a hilariously funny, entertaining game. I really like that.
And I guess you personally, what do you like to game when you're not playing Void Bastards?
That's a good question. I've been playing a lot of Switch lately because I've been traveling so much.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to think of I played an incredible amount of Into the Breach last year. I played 170 hours, I think. But I also, I recently finished, or not recently, actually it was probably last year, but I was talking to a friend of mine who worked on Red Dead 2.
Oh, yes.
And he was asking me if I played it and said, oh yeah, I finished it completely, and he's like 7% of people have finished that game completely. So I played a lot of Red Dead Redemption. I actually played a lot of Destiny too, and I played a lot of Destiny. But that's much more of a social activity. I wouldn't say I played it competitively or anything. So pretty mixed up bunch of stuff, but I do really like strategy games. So yeah, Into the Breach is, I think, the best designed strategy game I've ever played. And I really enjoyed it.